Now, as we get into this discussion, I wanted to make it very clear for any believer, any person who's saying he's Muslim, they need to completely and fully accept the Quran, not pick parts of it. Now, with that in mind, I will go back to Al-Hajj. That's the 22nd chapter of the Quran, the 40th verse. And the verse says, there is permission to fight. And this is given to those against whom war is made. Because Allah indeed has the power to help them. Yes. But that is not a permission to do violence. Not absolutely not.
And this is one verse that sometimes is misinterpreted.
Yes. Now, is as the Quran, it's a holy book, but it's also based on context. It's based on history. It's based on events. When this ayah was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, there was a number of events that happened before that. Let's look at these events first,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Now, when the Prophet was got the revelation from Allah, he was in Mecca, which is the capital of Islam, because the Kaaba is there. And he was facing persecution for 13 years, where people, especially the Quraysh, the most dominant, the most powerful group in Mecca, they were either lynching Muslims, they were killing Muslims, they were not even selling them water. They were not having anything to do with them because Islam was against what version of belief that was there, which was at the time belief based on gods that had been created.
Multiple
gods, yes. And they had their statues and all of that in Mecca. Now, 13 years, they were being persecuted, nothing happened. The Prophet did not accept anybody to fight. The Sahaba, these are the Arabic word which means the companions of the Prophet, people who lived during the Prophet's lifetime, they always asked, can we fight these people back? We are growing in number. He never accepted. The first step he took was to send a delegation of the Sahaba to, today it's called Ethiopia probably, but at the time was being referred to as Abyssinia, which was under a Christian king. And a group of Sahaba went there to seek refuge, to run away from all this persecution they were facing. Now, step number one, they left the scene. They did not fight. They went somewhere else. Abyssinia is in Africa.
Yes.
Then, when things got worse, the Prophet was instructed to do the hijrah to Medina, which is 243 miles from Mecca.
Okay.
And at the time, it was a Jewish-dominated city.
Okay.
And he was told to lead his people to Medina because the community in Medina were people of faith, and they would let the Muslims practice their faith because Makkah had become impossible. So, second step, the Prophet himself and his followers, they moved to Medina.
Yes.
And on going there, they did not fight the Jews. They did not create any violence. Instead, they created laws by which they would all live in jointly, a unified secular state among them. Now, when that happened, the people of Makkah, having realized that the Prophet was getting more followers, more their religion was growing, they decided to attack Medina and finish off.
Because he started representing a threat.
Yes. So when it was realized they're going to attack Medina, and they actually had arrived in Medina, is when this ayah was revealed. And they were told, now you have to defend yourselves. And in this self-defense, it's the last resort that they had to fight against the attacking army. It was an active conflict. And why were they fighting? Not to expand territory, not to make them believe in Islam, but to protect theirs and the Jews' freedom of faith against these people who were terrorists at the time, trying not to allow anybody to have freedom to live, freedom for faith. So it's against this long background which teaches us we have to be patient. We have no jurisprudence over capability to initiate any kind of violence. Is a long history. before we start thinking of violence in the name of Islam. Now, that distinction is not being made today. Nobody is thinking back to the context in which, even when they were allowed to make a conflict,
Yes.
there was a context for them to get into conflict.
Yes.
Very important.
And even into that context, he mentioned that violence could be used for self-defense at that time, not violence towards civilians, for example.
No. So, for example, the ayah, Surah Al-Baqarah, which is the second chapter of the Quran, and verse number 194, 195, also very important. What do they say? If they desist, these are the people who are attacking the Muslims. If they desist, if they stop attacking you, then surely Allah is most forgiving and most merciful. You stop, you don't continue the conflict with them. So that means, even let alone civilians or people who have not done anything to you, even the guy who has attacked you, who has come to kill you, if he says, okay, that's khalas, I'm not fighting you anymore, then that's it, you're not allowed to continue the conflict. So it's not just civilians, it's even an army that is sitting in front of you that has told you, okay, Miss Beatrice, we are not fighting with you anymore, then that's it. Your right to self-defense is done, because there is nothing to self-defense yourself against.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah?
And that right of self-defense was a long time ago.
Yes. Important distinction, rule we have to understand is that in Islam there is extremely big crimes and the smaller crimes. Now, the big crimes are the things that are defined as making Allah angry with you. The biggest one is associating other gods with God. So, La ilaha illallah. So there is only one God that you're believing in. Yeah, number one. So you cannot believe in other gods along God in Islam. So that is called shirk. It's the biggest. Among the biggest crimes is killing. Taking a life.
So please, are you paying attention to this?
Yeah, killing, whether it is another life, your life, or whoever's life it is, the Quran is saying, it is I, Allah is telling us, it is I that has created life, and it is I that will take life. So that's God's decision. No human being can decide when to kill or who lives and who dies. So before we even go to suicide, you have already been told, you don't have any space to do any kind of killing. Now, taking your own life, one of the big debate is shaheed, people who die in the path of Allah. They have great rewards in the life hereafter.
This is one that jihadists usually say.
Yes. Now, we all believe that it is God who makes judgment. It is Him who decides if He's going to accept you for being a good Muslim or not. But we have been given to the detailed regulations and rules of not how to pray to God, but how to live our lives. And we are talking about people dying in the suicide bombing. Now, we've discussed a lot how we are not allowed to kill, first of all. And the only permission that has been given to defend yourself has been detailed in the Prophet's time.
Yes.
Now, how suicide, who has taken his life, first of all, which is absolutely not permissible in Quran, in religious teachings. No way. Let's not confuse each other with people who are, we discussed the Quran telling us not to be perverse and cherry pick one section over the other. So let's not get confused ourselves with that. It's clear. You cannot take your own life, and neither can you take another life.
So it is not a matter of interpretation.
No.
This particular thing, no.
No, there is no confusion. There is no something that you see. It's not social science. It is a fact, and a fact that if you speak it in Somali, my language, or in Arabic or in French, it's going to be the same fact. But what is happening is we are cherry picking. We are picking one side over the other. We are saying the current jihadist groups, they are selecting sections of verses, sections of the Quran, and saying, oh, the Prophet
mentioned violence, and okay.
Yeah, let's do it. But we have discussed when the Prophet went to war, it was very clear what he was doing. It was in self-defense. And it was not in self-defense of Muslim faith only, also other faiths. Because Islam, a lot of the time, reference is made to Ahlul Kitab, people of the book, which is always the Christians and the Jews.
Yes.
So all of these things, again, they play into context, they play into translations. But again, to affirm, there is no confusion, it's very clear.
This is very important, guys. Very important. Could you repeat these so people can hear? Because I think it was last week. Yes, I saw a comment on Facebook. Somebody said, "But Islam preaches violence. Islam endorses violence. So it does not."
No. Pretty much clearly. Let's say the biggest form of violence is killing, and Islam is telling us it is God who gives life. This is in the Quran, and it's not debatable. And it is He who decides when to take life.
Yes.
So it's not for humans. We don't have any permissions to attack, to kill, and especially we do not have any allowance to commit suicide, let alone in suicide bombing. Even committing suicide because, let's say, you are stressed with your job and then you're going to fall off a big building. No, Islam doesn't accept that. Now, when you do all of these things that Islam is not accepting you, what do you think are the chances of God is going to reward you for making Him angry? It is very small chance. Again, God's judgment, we cannot place ourselves in the place of God, but we are humans, we have brains, we can think. The 1 + 1 is always going to equal to 2. So it's not going to be equaling to 5. You cannot get good out of bad.